I still remember the exact moment I saw it. That crumpled white envelope with my handwriting on it, peeking out from a half-tied black trash bag in the kitchen. My stomach dropped, my chest went cold, and for a few seconds, I genuinely couldn't breathe. That letter, the one I had poured my heart into, the one I had stayed up until 3 a.m. writing with tears dripping onto the pages, the one I hoped would finally make my mom understand me. It was sitting there, unopened, tossed away like garbage. That moment broke something inside me. Tell me honestly, if your own mother threw away your heartfelt letter without even reading it, what would you have done? Because I swear, I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or just walk away forever. Growing up, my relationship with my mom was complicated, to say the least. On the surface, we looked like any ordinary mother-daughter pair. Family pictures showed us smiling side by side, matching dresses on birthdays, hugs during holidays. But what those pictures didn't show was the tension underneath. My mom, Linda, was the kind of person who always needed control. Everything had to be her way. From the clothes I wore, to the friends I had, even to the way I spoke. She always had an opinion, and it was never gentle. She wasn't cruel, not in the obvious way, but her words cut deep in small, invisible ways. When I was 12, I remember showing her a drawing I'd spent days perfecting. A portrait of her, actually. And she looked at it, smiled faintly, and said, "It's nice, but you still can't draw hands properly." That was the first time I felt the sting of her approval being just out of reach. As I grew older, things only got worse. I was the kind of kid who craved validation, who wanted to make my mom proud. I studied hard, got good grades, stayed out of trouble, all in the hope that one day she'd say, "I'm proud of you." But that day never came. When I got a 95 on a test, she'd ask why I didn't get 100. When I got an art scholarship, she said it was good, but not stable. Every compliment was followed by a "but." Every joy came with a shadow. And yet, I kept trying, because that's what daughters do. They try to earn their mother's love, even when it feels impossible. The real cracks started showing when I turned 18. College applications came around, and I got accepted into an art program in another state, something I was beyond excited about. But my mom, she didn't take it well. She told me I was being selfish for wanting to move out, that family comes first, and I was abandoning her. I tried to explain that this was my dream, that it wasn't about leaving her, it was about finding myself. But she just shut down. For days, she barely spoke to me. When she finally did, she said, "If you walk out that door, don't expect things to be the same when you come back." That sentence haunted me. But I went anyway. College was freeing. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I could wear what I wanted, pursue art without judgment, make friends who didn't constantly make me feel like I was never enough. But even then, I called my mom every week. I'd tell her about my classes, my professors, the projects I was working on. And she'd respond with the same cold indifference. "That's nice," she'd say, or, "Don't forget, art isn't a real career." Still, I kept trying. Then one winter break I came home. I hadn't seen her in months, and I thought maybe time had softened things. But the second I walked through the door, she started picking at me. My clothes, my hair, my weight. "College made you lazy," she said. "You look tired. Are you eating properly?" The old tension flooded back instantly. I bit my tongue and tried to keep the peace, but it felt like walking on eggshells. Every conversation ended in sarcasm or silence. That's when I decided to write the letter. It wasn't impulsive. I'd been holding things in for years, all the little hurts, all the ways she made me feel small, unwanted, unworthy. I wanted to explain it all, but calmly. I didn't want to yell or accuse her. I wanted her to understand. So one night, after another silent dinner where she barely looked at me, I sat in my room and started writing. I wrote for hours. Words just poured out. I told her everything. How her constant criticism made me afraid to try new things. How I used to cry myself to sleep after arguments. How all I ever wanted was for her to be proud of me. I even wrote about the art scholarship. How it hurt when she couldn't celebrate it with me. I told her I loved her, but that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. By the time I finished, My hands were shaking. The letter was 6 pages long. I sealed it in an envelope, wrote, "For Mom," on the front, and left it on the kitchen table before going to bed. I remember lying awake that night, nervous but hopeful. I imagined her waking up, finding it, reading it quietly with tears in her eyes, then knocking on my door to talk, maybe even hug me. For once, I let myself believe we could finally fix things. But the next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made her coffee, hummed to herself, and didn't mention the letter once. I waited all day, trying to stay calm, thinking maybe she was waiting for the right moment. But by the next morning, still nothing. That's when I noticed the trash bag. She was cleaning up the kitchen, tying up the garbage, and something white caught my eye through the plastic. It was the envelope. My handwriting, "For Mom." I froze. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there staring at it, hoping I was wrong. But I wasn't. I walked over, pulled it out, and asked, "Did you read this?" She looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted her. "No," she said flatly. "I don't have time for that emotional nonsense." Those words, emotional nonsense, echoed in my head. I just stood there, holding the letter that still had my tear stains on it, realizing she hadn't even cared enough to open it. She turned away and said, "You always make everything so dramatic." That was the first time I ever yelled at her. I don't even remember everything I said. Something about how she never listens. How she only cares when it makes her look good. How I'm done trying. I remember her face, though, cold, blank, unreadable. Then she said, "If you're so unhappy here, maybe don't come back next time." I left that night. I packed my bag, took my sketchbook, and got on the last bus back to campus. I cried the entire way. For weeks, I didn't talk to her. She didn't call, didn't text, nothing. It was like I'd never existed. I threw myself into my classes, into my art, trying to forget. But every now and then, something small would remind me. A mother and daughter laughing together, a card in a store, a student getting a supportive call from home, and the pain would come rushing back. I told myself I didn't need her anymore, that I could build my own life. But deep down I missed her. Months went by. Then one day I got a call from my cousin Jessica. She told me Mom had fallen and hurt her back. It wasn't serious, but she was struggling to move around. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to rush home, to make sure she was okay. The other part, the hurt part, told me to stay away. In the end, I decided to visit. When I walked into the house, she looked smaller. Not physically, but something about her energy had changed. She didn't greet me with her usual criticism. Just a quiet, "You came." We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, "I've been thinking." I waited, expecting her to apologize or acknowledge something. But instead, she said, "You shouldn't hold grudges. Life's too short." That was it. No mention of the letter, no acknowledgement of what she did. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just nodded and said, "You're right." That night, I cried again. But this time, it wasn't sadness. It was realization. She wasn't going to change. Over the next few weeks, I helped her around the house. Cooked, cleaned, took her to appointments. I told myself I was doing it out of compassion, but deep down, I was waiting for something. A sign that she saw me, that she cared. One evening, while organizing her mail, I found something that made my heart stop. In a drawer next to her bed, she had kept dozens of old letters and cards from people. Her coworkers, her friends, even random thank you notes, neatly stacked and tied with ribbon. But mine, the one I had written from the bottom of my heart, that one was still gone. That night, something inside me hardened. I decided that if she wasn't going to see me for who I was, then I'd stop trying to earn it. I'd live my life my way, even if it meant leaving her behind. But fate had other plans. A few months later, I got the biggest opportunity of my life. A gallery wanted to feature my artwork. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. And yet, when the day came, I found myself hesitating. I wanted her to be there. Against my better judgment, I called her and invited her. She hesitated too, but said she'd try. On the night of the exhibition, I kept looking at the door, hoping she'd show up. The room was full. Lights, cameras, people admiring my art, telling me how powerful it was. My professor introduced me as an artist whose work explores the complexities of family and identity. It was surreal. But when I looked out into the crowd, she wasn't there. I smiled anyway, pretending it didn't hurt. After the show ended, I went outside to get some air, and that's when I saw her car pulling up. She stepped out, holding something in her hand, a folded envelope. My heart stopped. She walked up to me, looking nervous, and said, "I think this belongs to you." It was the letter, the same one I'd found in the trash. Before I could speak, she said quietly, "I read it." And just like that, the world around me faded. So that's where I'll pause for now. Because before I tell you what she said next, and how everything changed afterward, I want you to think about this. If someone you loved ignored your pain for years, and only decided to care when it was convenient for them, would you forgive them? Or would you walk away for good? Let me know what you'd do in my shoes, because the choice I made next changed everything. When she said those 3 words, I read it. I swear time froze. I just stared at her, not sure if I'd heard right. The letter. The one she had thrown away without even opening. The one that had broken me. She was standing there holding it like it suddenly meant something. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, relief, confusion, or disbelief. My voice trembled as I asked, "Why now?" She didn't answer right away. She just looked down, fiddling with the edges of the envelope like she was afraid of it. "I found it," she finally said. "It was behind the shelf. I don't know how it ended up there." I almost laughed. Behind the shelf. No, I remembered exactly where I found it, in a trash bag. But I didn't correct her. I just stood there, my chest tight, waiting for her to say something that would make sense of everything. She sighed and said, "I read it last week. Every word. I didn't realize you felt that way." My throat tightened. "You didn't realize?" I asked quietly. "Mom, I wrote you 6 pages. I cried while writing it. I begged you to just hear me. You threw it away." Her eyes darted away. "I didn't mean to." "You did." I cut her off. I wasn't yelling, but my voice had that kind of quiet anger that burns hotter than shouting ever could. "You saw it. You called it emotional nonsense. Those were your words." She looked like she wanted to deny it, but she didn't. Instead, she just whispered, "I was wrong." For a second, I couldn't believe it. My mother, the woman who never admitted fault, never apologized, never even acknowledged my feelings, just said she was wrong. It didn't sound like much, but to me, it was like hearing thunder in a desert. Still, I wasn't ready to let her off easy. "Why did you come tonight?" I asked. She looked at me, her eyes glistening under the streetlights. "Because I saw the photos online," she said. "Your cousin sent them. You looked so happy. And I realized I hadn't been part of that happiness in a long time." We stood there in silence for what felt like forever. People from the gallery walked past us, laughing, congratulating each other, but I didn't hear any of it. It was just me and her, standing on the sidewalk with years of pain between us. "I don't know what to say," I finally murmured. She took a step closer and said softly, "Maybe don't say anything right now. Just let me be here." Part of me wanted to push her away. Another part, the part that had always hoped she'd show up for me, wanted to let her in. Against my better judgment, I nodded. We went inside the gallery, and for the first time, she actually looked at my art. She walked slowly from one canvas to another, studying every piece. I could tell she was trying to understand them. One of the paintings, a woman standing alone in a storm, holding a letter, caught her attention. She turned to me and asked, "Is this one about me?" I didn't lie. "Yes." She didn't speak for a long time, then quietly said, "It's beautiful." That night, she didn't criticize. She didn't correct. She didn't lecture. She just listened. It felt surreal, almost uncomfortable, because I wasn't used to that version of her. When we left the gallery, she hugged me. Not one of those stiff, polite hugs she usually gave, but a real one. Tight, shaky, like she was afraid I'd disappear. I didn't know whether to cry or to laugh, so I just stood there, hugging her back, not sure if it was forgiveness or habit that made me do it. Over the next few weeks, she started calling more often. At first, I was cautious. I'd answer, keep the conversations short, afraid that one wrong word would bring back the old tension. But she surprised me. She asked about my projects, complimented my work, even sent me photos of paintings she liked and said, "This reminded me of you." It was strange, unfamiliar, for a while. It felt like maybe things could finally be different. Then one evening, she called me crying. I had never heard her cry like that before. She was always the composed, hold it together type. Between sobs, she said, "I need to tell you something." My stomach dropped. She told me she'd gone to the doctor for her back pain, but they'd found something else, something worse. Stage 2 breast cancer. I didn't know what to say. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. All the anger I had been holding onto suddenly melted away, replaced by fear. She said the doctors were optimistic, that it was treatable, but she sounded small, scared, like a child. For the first time, I heard my mother sound human. I told her I'd come stay with her during treatment. She resisted at first, said she didn't want to burden me. But I insisted. Moving back home felt like stepping into an old wound. The house smelled the same. The furniture hadn't changed, but everything felt heavier. I could see the exhaustion on her face, the way she tried to stay strong even when her body was failing her. I became her caretaker, cooking, cleaning, driving her to chemo appointments. At first, it was hard. The old patterns tried to sneak back in. Sometimes she'd get irritable or snap at me out of frustration, and I'd feel that familiar ache in my chest. But then, she'd apologize, something she never used to do. Every time she said, "I'm sorry," it softened something inside me. One night, after one of her tougher treatments, we sat together in the living room. She was quiet for a long time, then said, "You know, I read that letter 3 times. I looked up, surprised. She continued, "The first time, I was defensive. I wanted to argue with every word. The second time, I cried. The third time, I realized you were right." She took my hand, her voice trembling. "I was so afraid of being a bad mother that I became one. I thought pushing you would make you strong. But I only made you feel small. I'm so sorry, sweetheart." I had imagined that apology 1,000 times, but hearing it for real was overwhelming. Tears spilled down my cheeks before I even realized it. "I just wanted you to love me for who I am," I whispered. She squeezed my hand. "I do. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it." That night, for the first time in years, I felt peace. We stayed up late talking, really talking, about everything. My childhood, her childhood, my dad leaving when I was little, how she had been carrying so much bitterness she didn't know how to let go. I finally understood her in a way I never had before. She wasn't just my mother, she was a flawed, scared, lonely woman who had done her best with what she knew. Over the next few months, things got better between us. We laughed more, cooked together, watched old movies. It felt like a second chance. Like we were rewriting the story of us. But just when I started to believe we'd get our happy ending, life had other plans. Her health started declining faster than expected. The doctors said the cancer had spread. I remember sitting in that cold, white hospital room, holding her hand while she slept, feeling both gratitude and grief tangled together. Gratitude for the healing we'd found, grief for the time we lost before it. One afternoon, she woke up and said, "I have something for you." She reached into the bedside drawer and handed me a small, worn notebook. "It's my turn to write to you," she said, smiling weakly. After she passed a few weeks later, I couldn't bring myself to open it for a long time. It just sat on my desk, staring at me, waiting. When I finally did, I found pages and pages of her handwriting, letters addressed to me. She had written them during her treatments, reflecting on our life together, apologizing for the past, telling me how proud she was of the woman I had become. In one of the last entries, she wrote, "I know you might never forgive me completely, and that's okay. Just remember, I never stopped loving you, even when I didn't know how to show it. You taught me what love really is." Rating that broke me all over again, but this time, it was a healing kind of pain. I realized that sometimes closure doesn't come in the way we imagine. Sometimes it's not a grand apology or a perfect moment. It's in small gestures, quiet realizations, and second chances that come too late but still matter. After her funeral, I went back to the house one last time. While sorting through her things, I found that same envelope. My letter. Sitting neatly on her nightstand. She had kept it this time. On the back, in her handwriting, she'd written, "Read and understood." I just sat there, holding it, crying. All those years of pain, misunderstanding, and longing, they finally found their full circle. A year has passed since then. My art career has grown in ways I could have never imagined. I've had more exhibitions, sold pieces to collectors, even started teaching part-time. But every painting I make now carries a piece of her. Her flaws, her strength, her humanity. I've even made an entire series inspired by our story. The centerpiece is a painting called The Letter. It shows a young woman holding an envelope in one hand and reaching toward the light with the other. At the opening night, I dedicated it to her. People often ask me what inspired it, and I always say, it's about forgiveness, even when it comes too late. So, to anyone listening to this story, if you're holding on to hurt from someone you love, I won't tell you to forgive easily. Some wounds take time. Some people never change. But if there's even a small chance that healing is possible, don't wait too long to take it. Because I learned that regret cuts deeper than anger ever will. My mom never got to see all the things I achieved, but I know she'd be proud now. I can almost hear her voice saying, "It's beautiful," the same way she said it at that gallery years ago. And somehow, that's enough. So tell me, what would you have done if you were me? Would you have forgiven her after everything? Or would you have held on to the pain and walked away forever? Let me know in the comments. If you felt something while listening to this story, if you believe that forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, then please like this video. It really helps more people find stories like this. And if you want more true, emotional Reddit-style stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. I share a new story every week. Stories that remind us we're not alone in our pain, and that healing is always possible, even from the people who hurt us the most. Thank you for staying till the end. This one came from the deepest part of my heart. I'll see you all in the next story.